Okay. So it says here that we're live. So I suppose we are live. So I'm just gonna take a second to make this stream public. And so would you want to share out now?
Sure.
Or
Yeah,
do you want to
it's
do that
fine.
later?
This is good.
So what you can do is that you can go onto your Facebook and write my name there, Raheen Fatma. Search for a profile.
Oh no, I'll do that later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll take me too long
I've
to
been
do it.
doing it way too long here, like
Yeah.
while I'm talking to other people. So I think
Right. Okay.
I'm good at that now.
It
The
would
best
take
thing in
me
the world to be good at, but yeah.
it takes me 30 minutes to do that, so I'll wait.
Okay. Let me just make it a public, everybody. So I'd really love if all of the people that are watching now can share out the same way. You can just, when you see my stream, you'll have an option share. You share publicly onto your timeline or your wall or whatever you want to call it, honestly. And so your friends and family can see that, and in that case, also your frenemies can see that. That'd be a nice thing. Maybe they can learn something, a thing or two. And yeah, you can comment down about your thoughts, and I think we should officially get the show started. So, hi, this is Raheen. Well, if you're watching, you probably know who I am. If not, you can search me up on Facebook because I don't like to brag about the things that I do. So today we have Daniel Donal with us. So it's very interesting that we connected, and I really wanted to interview him. So I was like, oh my God, let's do this. And we are doing this right now. So I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then we can kickstart this interview. How's that?
Great. First, Raheen, thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you. This is a really nice opportunity. So a little bit about myself for you and your listeners. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, which is on the west coast of the United States. Probably many people know some of the big companies like Amazon, Boeing, the airplane maker, Starbucks coffee, Microsoft. All of those companies are headquartered in Seattle. So I went to the University of Washington, where I studied speech communication. Speech communication is the study of all kinds of human communication, public speaking, negotiation, small group communication, leadership communication. And I studied speech communication for all three of my degrees, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. And then I moved to Japan. And I have been living in Japan for over 20 years. And this is now my new home and my new life. I do visit the United States from time to time and travel in Europe when I can. Of course, now during this pandemic, none of that is possible. But basically, my professional career has been in education. And I've been teaching at two universities in Japan. And the one that I'm at now is called Waseda University. It's one of the largest, I think it is, the largest private university in Japan. And it's in Tokyo. And I teach professional communication. So, yeah, my home is in a very nice kind of beach community with a lot of surfers. We can walk to the ocean in about 10 minutes. And so it's very casual and warmer than Tokyo. And I've been living here the entire time for over 20 years. So that's a little bit about me. And I noticed someone said they welcomed me with a message. So thank you very much. So back to you, Raheen.
Yeah. So, and now tell me one thing. I mean, it's usually that I start from like the start, but I just want to ask you one question before I do that. Tell me, do you speak Japanese?
Yes, I do. But it's important to recognize that because I came here when I was over 30 years old, That's too late to really learn a language, at a native level. It's really good to start when you're 2 or 3 or from a baby. So yes, I speak Japanese conversationally. I don't feel comfortable giving public presentations using Japanese language. I will almost always find a way to do that in English. But yes, the daily conversation is no problem. I do my university faculty meetings in Japanese, but I'm not nowhere near fluent, a native, but I do my best.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's like the thing is, I feel like when you're like learning as a baby, that's what you learn fast, and you just kind of like learn into that language and grow into that. But when you're
Exactly.
learning at, no offense, let's just say like a grown up age, right? Then it is very different. So now, tell me, you were born in Seattle. How was it like? Because I know Seattle, and you just mentioned that there's so many, big companies and Starbucks. Oh my God, that is, headquartered in Seattle, and everybody knows Seattle. I watch a lot of American TV shows on Netflix, so I have a good introduction to American things 101.
Sure.
Let's just say that. So yeah, how was it being born in Seattle? How did you grow up? So basically about your early childhood, so we get a
Okay.
good idea
Mm-hmm.
about your early days.
Sure. Well, I have, there are 6 children in my family, and I'm the second from the oldest. And so we had a very busy childhood with, lots of sports and music and drama and different school activities happening. It was, I think, a nice place to grow up because Seattle it has really good natural environment. So we can go 1 hour drive up to the mountains to go skiing. We can go to the ocean driving 40 minutes. We can go to lakes. We can go hiking in the fort. There's just a lot of activities, outdoor activities to do there. So it was really, I think, a fun place to grow up. And I lived exactly across the street from the high school that I attended. So in the morning, I could actually wait for the bell to ring for the first class and then just walk across the street and I would be on campus. So it was really a kind of convenient location to grow up as a high school student.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. So the thing with me is that I am in the 8th grade, and when I did go to school, I had to travel cities. So it's basically twin cities of Pakistan. So they're like pretty close, it's like a 20-30 minutes drive, but you actually cross a city while you're going to that, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I traveled cities when I'm going to school. So I have to travel, quite some time, let's just say that. But now it's all on Microsoft Teams. So you just kind of like click that button of the join class and
Sure.
You are there, right? So it's like so amazing. Now tell us more about what your ambitions were when you were young. I mean, of course, everybody has this kind of thing that I might actually end up being that, and sometimes you do, and sometimes that's like way opposite what you actually end up becoming. So how was that for you?
That's an interesting question, Raheen. Actually, in my case, I feel like from a very early age, as a young child, it was my destiny to become a teacher. In fact, I had a nickname when I was maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. My classmates called me teacher because I was always, trying to help another student with a English or some kind of lesson. And I've just always enjoyed trying to enable other people to learn. And so that really began at a very early age. I was always interested in books and would go to the library every weekend as a young boy. I did a lot of sports, but I was never good enough at any sport to be like on the first team in high school or something. So I just dabbled around in a lot of different sports activities. But I finally realized that my real talent and my real mission in life is to be in education. And so I just followed that path. When I finished my 4-year bachelor's degree at the University of Washington, I knew that I wanted to continue. I wasn't ready to go work at a company. I loved the university life, being on campus, going to the cafes, writing papers. I just really enjoyed that university campus life. So I just stayed, and I just went all the way through. And so for me, there was never really any question from a very early age what I thought I would want to do. The only thing, if I could do it again, the one thing that I think I would do differently when it came time to choose my major, as I mentioned before, I got into speech communication. I think if I could go back in time and do it again, I would choose something like education leadership, because I do enjoy teaching, but I really have a passion for the administration side. And I sort of wish now that I would have taken that other track, so that eventually become, a college president or some, at least a dean or a vice president at a university or a college, at a community college. Raheen, I'm not sure if you're aware of the U.S. system where we have at least 4 different kinds of colleges. One of them are called community colleges.
Oh, I watch enough TV shows. Don't worry.
Oh, you know about that? Okay,
they've
right.
got me covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
The U.S. system of community college, I think, is quite unique to the United States. Community colleges are usually, almost 1/10 of the price of private colleges in most states. So they're very inexpensive, and 100% of students who apply get in. So nobody is rejected from a community college. If you want to go there, you can go there. It doesn't matter what your high school grades were. It doesn't matter if, there's no standardized test to get into a community college. And I feel like this is a really important way of promoting equity and equality and helping people who maybe don't have the money to go to the elite private universities. They can start at a community college and perhaps transfer into another college if they want to do that. Community colleges are 2-year programs, and you can earn certificates, you can earn badges to show skills that you've learned. And as I just mentioned, you can also then transfer into a 4-year college or university. So, right, I sort of wish that I had taken this education leadership track, maybe get a PhD in that discipline. And so then I would be more prepared to go into the administration side of universities. But I didn't, and here I am teaching.
Yeah.
But it's good. I like teaching.
I mean, yeah, you just told us that, and I'm like, oh my God, how passionate you were speaking about teaching. This is amazing to see. And actually, I had that question. It's so nice that you answered that for me. And that was that, did you actually ever think that, oh my God, you're going to end up doing a PhD? Because, it's like right now I'm in the 8th grade. And for me, it's like, yeah, I have it clear in my mind that at some point in life, I would want to, probably after 30, I would want to, get like a PhD in something that I'm passionate about. But people, at times I see, and at some point I was like, oh my God, I'm like graduating, and then I'm like over, I'm done. I don't want to go to school anymore. I don't want to wake up early anymore. It's that time you want to see that, but just at some point you would want to go on and on and on and study and have that, university life. So that was always clear for you. Now coming to teaching, how is it? And there's always some struggles to teaching as well, because you have to be firm at times, but not way too strict. But yeah, you have to kind of like strike that very healthy, nice balance. So yeah, let's know about teaching from you.
Sure. Well, I've only taught in universities, most of my courses have been graduate school courses. So these are working adults or people who have already, of course, they've completed their bachelor's degree. I'm working in the Graduate School of Accounting in my university. And so these are these are students who have a mission of becoming a professional accountant. And so I don't have a lot of challenges with motivation. These learners are very passionate about getting their professional skill development, and so there's nobody sleeping in the back of the classroom or skipping class. They're very dedicated. They're usually age 23 to 27, around that age group. So these are adult learners. So I don't have experience teaching high school or even undergraduate. I've taught some classes, but mostly my career has been graduate students. So it's a kind of different experience, I think, than a lot of like K through 12 teaching. And yes, this pandemic year has been, of course, challenging. All teachers and students are having challenges, I think, during this year. And, trying to make the adjustment to online teaching. It has been, I think, difficult, but we are making adjustments, the courses that I teach, and I think the students feel more and more comfortable with the situation. I'm hoping, as I'm sure you're hoping, and your audience is hoping, we can get this pandemic behind us and get back to a kind of normal education life as soon as possible.
Yeah. And so, one thing that I really, really want to ask you is that have you been teaching, you've been teaching online, for like, well, the last year actually,
Yes.
because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Have you been teaching online or, were you not teaching at all?
Yes, teaching online, 100%. All of my classes that I usually teach, I moved online. Before the pandemic, I taught always in the classroom. I wasn't teaching online at all. But at our university right now, we're in a different phase where every professor can make their own choice. Do you want to be in the classroom? Do you want to be online? Do you want to have real time, like Zoom classes? Or do you want to have what we call on-demand recorded classes? And so I have been doing mostly on-demand courses. This means I do video recordings using Zoom or some other application. I record my lesson. It has the video and the voice. I show PowerPoint slides or I show PDF slides. And then the students are able on their own schedule to access those lessons just by clicking on a link. And so it's not as interactive, of course, because they can't ask me questions. It's just a recorded class. But most of my students say they really value this way of learning for now, right, during the pandemic, because they have the total freedom of schedule. They can do it whenever they want to without having to rearrange their schedule, to have a live course. So I'm doing all of my classes now on demand. But the next semester, starting in April, I'm going to do a couple of my classes, real-time Zoom classes, but mostly on demand, continuing that.
And honestly, one thing that I really want to say, you're very lucky first to be teaching adults, because I interviewed one of my teachers and she told me the struggle of teaching, eighth graders, because some people are sleeping in the class. Some
Sure.
people, very few, admit to be sleeping in the class. And, some are very active in class. Some don't know anything when asked questions in the class, not paying attention at all. So, I mean, the biggest problem is that while you're running Microsoft Teams, you can also open YouTube, Netflix, or Amazon or anything. So actually, you can binge watch while just taking classes. That is the main problem of all these programs. Even while Google Meet, you can do that. I mean, it's weird that I know that, we can do that, but I know that, right? So I feel like you're very lucky to be teaching adults and people that like really, really want to do it. It's not that they're just doing it to get through high school. So yeah. Now tell me one thing. There's many things that happen, in the educational, sector, I would say. And there's grades, and some people think grades, just grading somebody on their academic performance, it's not right. Some people think of other things, and the people have their own beliefs as to one practice that should not be there. What is your thought on one practice that should not be there in the educational sector right now, as your experience, I mean, in the US or in Japan?
If I could make one change, I would eliminate standardized exams. And I don't know in your country what kind of exams you have. In the United States and in Japan, in many countries, there are standard exams, for example, entrance exams. And the score coming out of high school, for example, the score that you receive on that standardized test means you could get into some elite great school or, maybe not. So everything depends. Basically, your trajectory, the next years of your life, all depends on the one score you get on that standardized exam. It's a one-shot chance, and I really think that this is a big problem. I mean, we can imagine many reasons why this is not the best way to think about student performance. Maybe you didn't sleep the night before. Maybe you had some family problem and it's rolling around in your mind and affecting your ability to take the exam. Maybe your family doesn't have money and you're hungry. You didn't even get breakfast because there's no food in your house. That affects your performance on the exam. Or there's a more basic problem, which is just learning styles, right? You probably know already that I'm not sure personally for you, but there are students who maybe do better with reports, or maybe some do better with exams. Some do better doing a demonstration of a skill or something else. That we have many kinds of talents as humans. And to take this one kind, this standardized exam, which is timed, right? So it means you have to be fast. You have to perform in writing under a high pressure situation, to put all of your academic career onto that one exam. I really think we shouldn't do that. But the reason most universities require those standardized exams is it's easiest for the administrators, because they just get a computer readout and they see, oh, Rahim got this score, Johnny got this score, and then they can rank you. And it's very simple. Reading essays or looking at videos of, that students submit, or some other form of evaluation, is much more time consuming. And universities and colleges, many in the United States, just want to do it the easy way. And so they have the standardized exams. So to answer your question, I would eliminate standardized exams, especially for college entrance purposes. But more broadly, I think standardized exams really are a problem throughout education, not only entrance exams, but other kinds of times during the year.
Yeah, and honestly, I could not agree more, because one thing that I'd also like to eliminate is standard exams. I wouldn't necessarily say entrance exam, but all sorts of standard exams. I mean, see, at some point, my learning style was very different than what it was, for 2-3 years. I was not adjusted to, you have 2 hours to write so many things, and you need to remember what you did all year. And that point was when I had a lot of family things going on.
Mm.
And that specific week that I had my exams, my brother was in the intensive care unit. So my brother was diagnosed with blood cancer. That so the thing was that there was so many things that were happening at the back of my head. The day before I met my brother, and it was very emotional for me. So for me, it was just way too much pressure that was put on to me
Yeah.
to score well. Not by my parents, but just by my teachers because they hoped that I would be the one that scored the most in the class. Because let me just admit it, I was always the teacher's pet. I was teacher's favorite. I still am. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but at times there can be a lot of things expected from you, and then
Sure.
that comes out as performance anxiety. And I feel like I know many people that have experienced panic attacks before any exams, especially entrance exams, because you're so right, before any college or when you're even just entering a new school, they actually would, require an entrance exam. It's just like, oh my God, but my parents expect so much from me, when my teachers, and what will I study, and then my job, and then there's so many things that are just depending. And then it also depends on, the circumstances that you are in, that your performance can be life changing in both respects. So
Yes.
tell me something, one thing that you think can really really, by being implemented, change the way education is right now in a very good way.
Good question. Um, One thing that I think could make a big change,
Mm.
and now I'll speak about especially education in the United States because that's what I know. And every education system in every country is different, so it's, I think, not helpful to make a general statement. But based on my experience as a student in the United States, as a teaching assistant in the United States, I think one of the biggest things that can make a huge difference is for teachers to become comfortable with allowing students to to teach each other, to learn from each other. So to give more agency to students. I think that a lot of teachers, even K through 12, all the way through, even into university, feel that they always have to be the center of attention. They're the teacher, they're on the stage, and they just want to talk for 90 minutes or for an hour and sort of take a spoon and feed information into these students who are just sitting passively in their chairs. And I would really like to see that change so that the teacher provides learning opportunities, provides the reading, provides the space, provides the energy and the passion and the questions, and then steps back and allow the students to take action and to be active and to teach each other and to give presentations and to have more active participation in their own learning, and let them guide themselves and each other into areas that they're interested in. The old model has always been the school decides the curriculum, the teachers take that decided curriculum and feed it to the students, and it doesn't matter what the students want to learn. It doesn't matter where the students' passions are. They don't have a choice. And for me, that should change. I think that would make a huge difference in the life of many students, not only during their school age, but into their later professional life, because now they have critical thinking skills. Now they have the ability, they have confidence. Now they understand that learning is not just memorizing, that learning is adventure, learning is play, learning is sometimes, quote unquote, failing, and then you have to bounce back and try something else. So this would be the one thing that I think could make, there are many things, but this is one thing that I think could make a huge difference in the life of many students. And I'll just say one more thing. I also believe that that words matter, that what we call things can shape how we see them and how we think about them, language. And I prefer to use the word learners instead of students. And if we think about that, there's a difference, right? When we call students students, the word student also has the root word study, right? What do students do? They study. But studying is not necessarily learning. Right? You could, if you're the teacher and you give me a set of facts and say, okay, Daniel, learn these facts, I could memorize them, commit them to memory, and maybe I could then put them on a test in the correct order. But is that learning, right? That's a kind of memorization strategy or skill. And so I like to think of my own students not as students but as learners. Studying is a kind of is an activity, but learning is the outcome, right? So how to help my learners actively engage with the material and then find joy and passion in that process. And if they can do that, it's more than just studying, right? It's the learning that we should be concerned with as educators. It's just a final comment on your question. I would like educators to begin thinking of their students as learners, not as students.
That is so amazing because, well, it's not that that's the best thing in the world, but I've always been, addressed as students, and that got to me. And but I didn't quite, until I feel like right now, I didn't quite figure it out why. I'm like, why do you call me the same thing over and over again? Welcome students, good morning students, goodbye students, I'm leaving you students. There's so many students things. So yeah, I feel like learners is a more, it's a new thing because I think a lot of people are addressed as students when they're learning, right? And that isn't the best thing, right? So yeah, that is a very nice thing. And I feel like switching roles once in a while is a nice thing to do. That be in anything, even, the teacher being the student for a while or the learner for a while. I'm like, oh my God, did I just say student again? So yeah, I think that is a very, very nice thing. Now, tell me another thing. How do you see first, being in the US, you studied there, you were a teaching assistant there, and now in Japan. Do you see the difference in learning styles or just the way that people would question uh, and be interested in what you're saying?
Sure. Again, I think it's always good not to make big generalizations about cultures or people. But I think that there's maybe call it a tendency or a trend for learners education system in the United States, I do feel is different. In my over 20 years here in Japan, I only have experience with universities, not K through 12, but I have met younger students and I see, programs on TV in Japan about the K through 12 system. There's a lot of standardized testing in Japan. There's a lot of memorizing facts, a lot of focus on testing. And of course, the United States education system also has this. As I said before, the United States system, especially coming out of high school, going into college, there are standardized exams. And so the United States has it as well. But in my experience, I would say the tendency is for education system in the United States to have less memorization, still too much, in my opinion, but less than in Japan. More critical thinking, more presentation, more active learning in the United States. Japan is very teacher focused, very lecture structured, and students are not expected or even encouraged in many schools in Japan to give their opinion or maybe even to ask questions. And I think that there could be a very different kind of learning opportunity in Japan if people could change their way of thinking here about, students as learners, for example, or about giving more agency to students to be more active, to think of the possibility that teachers can learn from students. One of the things that I really love about teaching, one of the things that keeps me in this career, is that I open myself up to learning from my students, always. I don't see myself as the person with the knowledge. I see myself as the coach, the motivator, the supplier of tools and ideas, the person who encourages. But I dive right into the activities with the learners in my, even graduate students, right? I join them in the discussions. They always have something smart and interesting to say, or that they do, and I learn from that. And what a gift that I can earn a salary as a teacher and learn at the same time from younger people. And I just love that. And I think I would like to see Japanese education move in that direction more.
Yeah, that'd be very, very nice. Thank you so much for coming on. It was so nice to have you. And, you're always at somebody to talk to about education, and that is always amazing. And just, I would say, more of an experience than an interview or a conversation. So thank you so, so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching, commenting. And for those that shared out, thank you so much. And if you haven't shared out, you can still do that. You can go on and share out and start a watch party. So that's how you can do that, and that'll always stay onto your timeline or wall. So thank you so much, and I'd come again with another guest. But before that, I can just take a moment and thank you and hear from you your last words to the audience.
Sure. Thank you, Raheen, for inviting me. This was a really nice opportunity to speak to younger people about education. And I want to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. At such a young age, I think it's just amazing that you have this podcast. I mean, when I was your age, I was, riding my bicycle over, jumps in the in the playground. I wasn't doing podcasts or interviewing people. So I think that it's just wonderful. You're making great connections. You're helping other people to learn. And I think you're probably inspiring a lot of other young people to, to take chances and to step out. So congratulations on what you're doing. I'm going to be following you in your career and cheering you on. So thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you. And the last question that I want to, just a very small one.
Sure.
If anybody here in the audience would like to reach out to you for whatever reason, how can they do so? More professional reasons.
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody has LinkedIn account, you can send me a message. That is probably, yeah, I have a Facebook account, but I'm not active on it much at all. So I don't even look at it much. I'm mostly very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So somebody wants to know, why am I familiar with Japan? Can I just mention that quickly?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm not sure, Tsuyoshi, if you heard the start of this, but I mentioned at the beginning of the interview in my self-introduction that I'm a native of Seattle, Washington, and I came to Japan in 1995. And so I've been living here for over 20 years and teaching at Waseda University. And so, well, that's how I know Japan. It's my second home now.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I hope that I can come up with another amazing guest. I mean, nobody can measure up to your amazingness, but we'll find somebody like near that. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
Rahim.